Imagine you are in AD 1912 and the air inside Villa Mondragone tastes like old leather and quiet panic. You stand in a corridor that pretends to be peaceful, but the silence acts like a lock. You hear a door open somewhere deeper in the Jesuit villa, quick, cautious, like a money drawer. You feel hunger in your ribs, not for food, but for artifacts, for leverage, for the one object that changes a career from dealer to legend. You don't know if the next room holds a treasure or a humiliation, but you step anyway because hesitation costs everything. You slip into the room as if you belong there. Your coat brushes a shelf. Dust lifts like smoke and clings to your throat, but there is no time to cough. You see books stacked not like a library, but like a retreat, items pulled from public life and forced into hiding. A caretaker watches too closely. He stands with his hands folded, but the eyes are sharp, counting every movement. He wants this over fast. He wants the past to stay boxed. You feel the pressure of an unspoken rule: touch quickly, pay quickly, leave quietly. But the room refuses to feel like a shop. It feels like a border crossing. You move along a table where volumes wait like prisoners. The bindings face away, modest, almost ashamed. You reach for one, then another, pretending calm. Your fingers skim cracked spine, cold clasp, brittle edge. Each book offers a title, a language, a familiar obedience. But the hunger in your chest is not satisfied by obedience. Therefore, the hand keeps searching for the one thing that does not fit. You find it. Plain binding. No crown. No cross. No title. It sits like a stone among bread. It looks like it tries to pass as harmless, but it fails because it is too quiet, too blank, too deliberate. You lift it, and the weight lands in the palms with a dense, honest heaviness. Parchment, not paper. Old skin, not cheap pulp. You feel the cover flex, stubborn, like it resists being opened. The caretaker shifts. The floorboards answer. The door behind changes its angle by a finger's width. A normal purchase does not make a man guard a doorway. Therefore, the pulse quickens because this is not commerce. This is extraction. You open it, fast, before anyone changes a mind, and the page hits like a slap. You see lines of script that refuse to become sound. Not Latin, not Greek, not Hebrew, not any alphabet that fits into one breath. The characters lean and loop like living things. They repeat in patterns that feel like speech, but the speech has no mouth. You feel the brain reach for a hook, any hook, but it slides off. You turn a page and the drawings lunge forward, plants, stems, leaves, roots. At first, they look like herbal medicine, the kind an apothecary trusts. But you look again and you see the lie: leaves stitched from one species, flowers borrowed from another, roots that belong to nothing on earth. The plants look real until they don't, and that shift makes the stomach tighten. A prank does not need to be this consistent. A scientific text does not need to be this wrong. Therefore, the object becomes dangerous because it lives between categories. You flip faster. The pages whisper. The ink stays dark, confident. You see diagrams, circles, spoked wheels, starburst shapes, like a sky mapped by someone who refuses to label the stars. Then the shock. Small human figures, pale, naked, tucked inside tubes and pools. Green liquid pathways connect them like plumbing in a body that is also a city. You feel heat climb the neck, not from desire, but from the sheer audacity of it. Medical? Alchemical? Allegory? Joke? The page refuses to confess. Your heart does the math. If this is a cipher, it is a weapon. If it is a hoax, it is a trap. Either way, it survives where other books die. The caretaker steps closer. His shadow lands on the parchment. You feel the moment narrow. Either close it and lose it forever, or claim it and make enemies. The door behind shifts again. The room stops being a room. It becomes a checkpoint. You close the manuscript with a soft thud that feels like sealing a vault. You do not know who else wants it. You do not know if someone already regrets letting it appear. But you feel certainty on one point. This book refuses to speak, therefore it will force others to speak for it, true or false, and that makes it a battlefield. You move to the transaction like a man moving explosives through a crowd. The caretaker produces numbers, murmured, careful. Coins and notes change hands, but the real exchange is risk. You feel eyes from the shelves, as if every other book resents this one leaving. You tuck the manuscript close, underarm, undercoat, tight against the ribs where the heartbeat can hide it. You step out of the room. The door closes too quickly. You feel the villa exhale behind you, relieved to have the problem gone. But the relief is temporary. Therefore, the chase begins now, not later. Imagine the road outside, a world entering modernity, but still full of old shadows. The manuscript rides with you like contraband. The cover presses into your side with every step, reminding you this is not just paper. You feel the risk of theft in every crowd, the risk of fire in every lamp, the risk of war in every headline. A medieval object sits against a modern pulse. But the danger is not only thieves. The danger is interpretation. Therefore, the manuscript becomes a magnet for every kind of hunger: money hunger, national pride hunger, mystical hunger, professional hunger. You push forward into the long chase across centuries because this object does not sit still. It migrates like a fugitive, leaving only fingerprints, letters, rumors, and clues that feel planted on purpose. Imagine the parchment itself, scraped skin stretched into pages. It carries a birth window, AD 1404, 1438, like a suspect's vague alibi. You feel that range like a hand around the throat, close enough to smell medieval ink, but wide enough to hide a forger, a monk, an alchemist, a bored genius. The test someday points there, but you stand now in uncertainty. Therefore, every theory walks on thin ice. You see the manuscript's ink behave like it knows grammar. Symbols cluster and separate. Some shapes return again and again like common words. Lines flow without correction, without hesitation marks. The hand that writes moves with confidence. A hoaxer can mimic symbols, but can a hoaxer mimic fluent rhythm for hundreds of pages? You don't know. Therefore, the manuscript stays just out of reach, too structured to dismiss, too opaque to claim. Imagine a jump. Your mind vaults across the years and lands in a city that smells of coal smoke and wet stone. Prague. The manuscript's shadow appears in rumor here, whispered through collectors and courtiers. You see the kind of court where oddities become currency, horns claimed to be unicorn, stones said to sweat blood, clockwork animals that seem almost alive. In that hunger for wonders, a story glitters. A powerful emperor pays a fortune for a mysterious book. The name on the rumor tastes expensive, but you feel the trap. A rumor can be bait. Therefore, you step carefully because the manuscript loves stories that make it sound important. You push through halls crowded with velvet and anxiety. Servants move fast. Nobles laugh too loudly. You hear talk of secret arts, of transformations, of gold coaxed from base metal. But talk is not proof. Talk is smoke. Therefore, you look for anything solid: a letter, a ledger, a hand that points to a shelf. Nothing lands cleanly. The story shines, but the trail stays slippery. Now imagine two figures whose names feel like a knife sliding from a sleeve: John D., Edward Kelly. You see them in the mind's eye not as portraits, but as motion, quick glances, folded papers, private rooms. D carries maps and calculations, the kind that win queens and start wars. Kelly carries a reputation that clings like soot, part mystic, part con man. Did they carry this book? Did they sell it? You feel the uncertainty claw. Every witness speaks in maybes. Therefore, the trail becomes a corridor of fog. You step into that fog, and it is crowded. Scholars argue in candlelight. Courtiers bargain in whispers. Spies listen behind tapestries. The manuscript fits every agenda. To an alchemist, it promises transmutation. To an astrologer, it promises the sky's hidden machinery. To a spy, it promises coded intelligence. To a con man, it promises profit. Therefore, the manuscript survives by being whatever the seeker most wants. But then the chase hits something hard: paper against rumor, ink against legend. A real letter. Imagine holding it, not the manuscript, but a plea about it. You see the handwriting of a man in Prague, George Baresh, pressing desperation into lines. He begs a scholar far away to read a book that refuses to open. You feel the rawness in the phrasing, not curiosity, but need. A man shouts into a locked vault. But the vault does not answer. Therefore, the letter becomes a flare in darkness, proof that the manuscript exists and proof that it already humiliates minds. The letter points to Athanasius Kircher, a name that moves through Europe like a storm. Imagine a mind that devours languages, a collector of scripts, a builder of systems. If anyone can crack it, it is him. Therefore, hope sharpens into obsession. You follow the correspondence like footprints in snow. Another hand enters, Johannes Marcus Marci, sending the manuscript onward, attaching a note that points again toward that glittering emperor story. Again that name. Again that legend. The manuscript keeps pulling seekers toward the same shining claim. You step into Kircher's world, and it is not calm. You see shelves stacked with maps of language, diagrams of the cosmos, specimens in jars, tools, lenses, papers layered like geological time. Kircher's eyes run across symbols the way a general scans a battlefield. You feel the urgency. If this man fails, who survives after? But the manuscript stays sealed. The greatest decoder of the age holds it, turns it, stares into it, and still cannot make it talk. Therefore, the mystery deepens, not because the book shows power, but because it shows resistance. Imagine the manuscript settling into silence inside an institutional archive. It sits among other texts that confess when opened. But this one does not. People come and go. Empires shift. Fires threaten. Wars chew through libraries. You feel the fragility of paper in a violent world. But somehow the subject endures. Therefore, survival itself becomes evidence. Someone values it, someone protects it, or someone forgets it in the exact right place. Now the chase accelerates into the modern era and it becomes louder. You hear printing presses. You see newspapers. You feel the world shrink with telegraphs and trains. The manuscript returns to public life with Voynich as the catalyst, but public life is a harsher environment than monasteries. Public life demands answers. Therefore, the manuscript becomes not just a book, but a challenge thrown into a century that prides itself on solving things. Imagine codebreakers leaning in, smelling ink through time. Some come from wartime cipher rooms, hands trained by pressure, eyes trained by patterns. Others come from universities, armed with languages and ego. Others come from nowhere official, obsessives, hobbyists, mystics, people whose hunger is more dangerous because it is unregulated. Everyone sees the same symbols, but everyone carries different wishes. Therefore, the manuscript becomes a mirror that reflects the seeker's need. You watch methods collide, frequency counts, pattern grids, substitution charts. You see the script behave like language. Certain symbols cluster, certain positions repeat, line starts and line ends show habits. But when someone declares a solution, the solution collapses the moment it touches another page. A translation works for a paragraph, but it breaks on the next. Therefore, confidence becomes a trapdoor. You feel the temptation, force it to mean something, anything, so the pain stops. But forcing meaning makes fools quickly. Therefore, the manuscript protects itself by rewarding imagination and punishing verification. Imagine the enemies multiplying. Forgers see profit and want to add fake proof to sell a story. Patriots want it to be a lost national text, therefore they bend it toward their flag. Mystics want prophecy, therefore they read doom into loops and curls. Even the sober experts fight because reputations sit on the line. You feel the social pressure. Publish a solution, go viral, be remembered. But the manuscript does not care about memory. Therefore, it keeps chewing through careers. The object becomes the birthplace of a modern habit, the habit of attacking unknown writing with systematic tools, not prayers. You see statistical thinking creep in, the idea that a text has measurable behavior. You see the difference between a code, where a known language hides behind substitutions, and an unknown script, where the very language might be absent. Therefore, the manuscript stands at a crossroads. Old world secrecy meets new world analysis. Now imagine January AD 2026. The room is modern, but it does not feel safe. A fresh calendar hangs, but the case is old and hungry. You sit before a screen and high-resolution scans glow like a portal. The book opens again, and it feels like it watches. Your finger scrolls, therefore the pages turn without touch, but the impact still lands in the gut. You zoom in until the ink becomes terrain, thick strokes, tiny hesitations, edges where a quill lifts. You see repeats. You see clusters. You see a rhythm that looks statistical, not random. The page dares you. Either this is language or this is a perfect imitation of language. You feel the mind split. One side reaches for a solution, the other side slams on the brake. You don't know which side saves you. Therefore, every click becomes a moral decision. You run word clusters and the shapes behave like they have rules. Some symbols cling to the start of lines like a ceremonial opening. Some cling to endings like punctuation that refuses to admit it is punctuation. You see near duplicates, words that differ by one stroke, like morphological families in real languages. That behavior feels human. But humans also forge patterns. Therefore, the comfort of structure becomes another ambush. You flip to the bath pages and the figures stare back without eyes. Small bodies in tubes, in pools, in connected chambers. Pipes carry green fluid like a map of circulation, but it is not quite anatomy and not quite plumbing. You feel an involuntary laugh try to rise, but it dies because the drawings are too deliberate to dismiss. Medical diagrams? Alchemical allegory? A satire of medicine? You don't know. Therefore, the uncertainty gnaws, not because it is empty, but because it is crowded with possibilities. You hit the foldouts, rosettes, circular structures, islands of text around central hubs. You feel breath shorten. This is where lost sciences hide and where hoaxers show off. The page looks like a machine blueprint built for a mind that never exists in any recorded academy. But a hoaxer also loves spectacle. Therefore, awe becomes suspicious. You see the star pages, zodiac-like rings, little figures at the margins like calendar saints, but not quite. You feel the modern urge to label, Aries, Taurus, months, seasons. But every label is a hook that can drag the mind into false certainty. Therefore, the safest action is restraint, and restraint feels like losing. The clock becomes an enemy. The longer you stare, the more the brain starts inventing patterns. You feel it happen in the body, eyes dry, shoulders tight, jaw clamped. A line of glyphs starts to look like a known word. A shape starts to feel like a sound. But feeling is not evidence. Therefore, the manuscript weaponizes your need for meaning. Imagine the internet around the screen, roaring. Forums fill with confident translations. Videos declare final answers. Software tools promise breakthroughs. You see charts that look scientific, therefore they seduce quickly. But when the claims meet the text, they dissolve. A solution explains one page, but cannot survive the next. You feel embarrassment on behalf of strangers, but also fear, because the same weakness lives in every mind, pattern hunger. Therefore, the real battlefield is not the parchment. The battlefield is the interpreter. Imagine someone running algorithms that find clusters and probabilities. The output looks like authority, but authority can be counterfeit when the input is unknown. Models can hallucinate, therefore they can solve a mystery by inventing a world that fits the noise. You feel the modern danger. A machine can produce fluent nonsense with terrifying confidence. Therefore, the Voynich stops being just medieval oddity. It becomes training for survival in AD 2026. The decisive minute arrives not with fireworks, but with discipline. You stare at the script and feel a simple truth land like a weight. Cracking the code in one heroic stroke is a fantasy. The real ordeal is surviving the psychological ambush, staying honest when the mind begs to declare victory. The manuscript is a mirror. It lets you solve it 100 ways if you abandon the line. Therefore, the win is not translation. The win is restraint. You treat the manuscript like a crime scene, not a myth. You keep chain of custody in mind, who holds it, who hides it, who sells it, who benefits. You respect the material facts, medieval parchment, consistent ink, coherent scribal behavior. You accept the uncomfortable truth, meaning remains unproven. Therefore, the honest headline is not glamorous, but it is real. Now the dust settles, not because you win, but because you choose a disciplined kind of courage. You look around at the cost, and it is everywhere. Centuries of brilliant minds bend around one stubborn object. Countless solutions evaporate under scrutiny. The public keeps craving a final reveal, therefore the market for confident nonsense never dies. You feel the weight of that craving like a hand pushing the head toward a mirage. The verdict arrives inside the story, not outside it. You do not get to declare victory with a neat translation. The manuscript does not allow it. But you return with a stronger weapon than a guess: method. You demand evidence that survives every page, not just one seductive paragraph. You demand claims that can fail publicly, therefore truth can emerge through pressure rather than applause. You stand at the edge of AD 2026 and the modern mirror rises. Deepfakes flood feeds. Viral misinformation moves faster than corrections. Algorithms speak with confidence even when they hallucinate. You feel the same pressure that the Voynich applies, the demand for a story that feels complete. But the manuscript teaches a survival skill: resist confident nonsense. Demand chain of custody. Demand reproducible proof. Therefore, the medieval object becomes a modern drill: how to keep moving when the answer refuses to appear. You see the pattern. A mystery survives not only because it is difficult, but because it exploits a human weakness, meaning hunger. The Voynich refuses to speak, therefore people speak for it, sometimes honestly, often loudly, rarely carefully. The cost is trust. The cost is time. The cost is the slow corrosion of standards when spectacle pays better than patience. The legacy question lands without comfort. Imagine the next unsolved thing that enters your life: an image, a claim, a leak, a chart that looks official. You feel the familiar pull to share, to believe, to belong. But you stop. You breathe. You ask for proof. Do you see the same pattern today? When certainty becomes a product and mystery becomes a marketplace, what kind of person survives with integrity? Someone who needs an answer, or someone who can live inside the fog until evidence speaks?